So good. What a great day to be alive. Why don't you take a seat? When they told me that this was going to be our celebration day for 25 years, it made me a little nervous. Because a lot of times when you do something like this, somebody has the idea that they should do a collage. Do it like a video collection of all the worst moments in your life, to highlight all the fashion choices you should have never made even then, all the hair choices that you regret. So I'm so grateful that we don't get to travel through the memories I've tried to forget. But one of the things that I'm reminded of as we have journeyed through life is that it sometimes takes us time to understand where we're going and why we're going there. So there's some of you here tonight, and I don't know where you've come from, but I do know what you're called to. So I want you to know tonight that the reason we started this community called Mosaic was because the name of Jesus had been so misaligned by the culture of the church, that the one who called us all to be free was being represented by institutions that seem to be determined to hold us captive through our guilt and shame. Because it's a dangerous thing to trust people with freedom, isn't it? But one of the things I was so drawn to when I entered a relationship with Jesus was that he promised me he would make me free. And sometimes I think that's a confusing thing, because when I came to know Jesus, I didn't know anything about Christianity. I didn't know anything about the church. I didn't know anything about people who believed in Jesus. And what I've experienced in my life is that people will look at me and go, "You're 59? Why do you dress like you're 29? And then they'll see pictures of me when I was 29 and they'll go, "How come you dressed like you were 59? And it's really true. But it's not that when I was 29, I was dressing like 59, and now that I'm 59, I'm dressing like I'm 29. Let me tell you what actually happened. When I was 29, I was trying to become what everyone else told me I should be. And now that I'm 59, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm just being me. And I can tell you this from life experience. There's not enough time in life for you to live a life of obligation, for you to live a life that someone else wants you to live. There's not enough time in your life for you to be who other people want you to be. There's just not enough time in your life for you to do what other people want you to do, for you to dress the way other people want you to dress, for you to look the way other people want you to look, for you to act like other people want you to act, and not to be yourself. See, Jesus did not set you free so that other people could hold you captive. And that for me was the great dilemma of my journey into faith. See, by the time I was 29, I was trying so hard to be everything everybody else wanted me to be. And I never succeeded at it. People still did not like me. Still, people did not understand me. And I remember so many times Kim, who loves me so much, would just sort of appeal to me, "Can't you try to fit in?" And I would say to her with all sincerity, "I am trying to fit in. This is the best I can do." And so at 29, I felt like I was so old. I was so lost. I was so empty, trying to be what everyone else wanted to be, and somehow losing the person I felt like God created me to be. And a part of what we started Mosaic, so this is not who Jesus is. This is not the way Jesus is supposed to be reflected or represented. Jesus is the one who paid the ultimate price so that we could have freedom in him. And I want you to know that whatever you've ever heard about God, whatever you've experienced in your own faith journey, I want you to know that if you've experienced being controlled by guilt and shame, or feeling you need to conform because of the criticism and judgment of others, I want you to know that's not who God is. That's not why Jesus died. He did not allow himself to be crucified on a cross so that we could be standardized and conform to the expectations of others. He died so that we could be free. So don't give up your freedom. In Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 and 14, the scriptures tell us this: "You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free." I love that. Let's just pause there for a moment. You, my brothers and sisters, are called to be free. Maybe you're here and you're wondering, what is my future? What's my destiny? What are the choices I need to make in my life? And I may not know you or know anything about you. I may not know where you've come from, but I do know what you're called to. See, I want you to know whatever career path you choose, whatever journey you are on, whatever path life takes you, if you're going to trust God with your life and if you're going to hear his voice and follow him, I know what you're called to. You're called to be free. And if you find yourself enslaved, if you find yourself a prisoner to fear and to guilt, if you find yourself a prisoner to your shame and to your past, if you find yourself a prisoner constantly trying to become what everyone else wants you to be, I want you to know that's not the calling of God in your life. That is not the journey that God calls you on to. There's some of you who are here and you're a slave to your past. You're a slave to your pain. You're a slave to your wounds. There's some of you here, you're still a slave and it looks like bitterness. It feels like unforgiveness. Some of you are still slaves and it feels like anger. There's some of you who are still slaves and you don't even understand that these emotions that have captured you, they're actually chains that hold your soul down. And Jesus wants you to set you free from that. See, even if you don't believe in God, I want you to know that God believes in you, that he's called you to be free. And so many people think that actually the path of following Jesus limits your freedom. But I want you to know that's a distortion of reality. Jesus looks at us and he sees our captivity. He sees our bondage. He sees the prisons that we've made from our own choices and locked ourselves in. And he comes to bring us freedom. He calls you to be free. So I don't know where you are right now, but if you're not free, you're not where Jesus wants you to be. I can't see your future, but I do know this. There is a future with freedom if you will choose it. He says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. And then he says, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Now, this is an important warning, but I'm not sure why, but it seems to me historically, whenever there's a scripture that gives us an incredible truth, and then it's followed up with the do not, we focus on the do not. And so we don't pause long enough to respond to this statement, you're called to be free. We end up focusing on do not use your freedom to indulge your flesh. And so people focus on all the do nots because it's easier to identify all the do nots because we're good at the do nots. We keep doing the do nots. But I want you to know that if you spend your whole life focusing on the do nots, you will not spend your life focusing on the do's. And some of you are so overwhelmed by your own guilt and shame because all you know are the do nots and you know you're doing the do nots. But I want you to know that if you'll focus on the do's, you won't have time for the do nots. If you focus on the do's, you will be so overwhelmed by life. You'll be so overwhelmed by joy. You'll be so overwhelmed with meaning and purpose in your life that you'll just be doing and you'll forget that you're not doing the do nots because you're not doing them anymore. But here's a crazy thing. God has so leveraged your freedom that he leaves himself no way to leverage you by obligation. You ever notice we have so many laws, so many rules, so many policies, so many guidelines? Like traffic, all the driving rules. You have to pass a driving test to know all the rules. And they're crazy, right? Have you ever respected the law but felt like it was misapplied at a certain moment? You know, like when you're driving in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, I don't know where you've been, but you're driving in the middle of the night and you're all alone. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's no one anywhere. You see a green light, so you're driving and then suddenly it starts turning yellow. And you're driving faster, trying to make it, then it turns red before you get there. And you're going really fast because you tried to make it, but then you just decided to stop because you've been trained to stop at the red light. So you stop in the middle of nowhere. You're the only car. You ever had that happen to you? And you're wondering, why did this light turn red? What triggered it? Did it know I was coming? Is the universe against me? Why is this happening? And you stop. And you wait for the light to turn red and then turn green and it never changes. You ever had that happen? You ever had that moment where you thought, I think it's broken? It's not working. It worked when it turned red, but it's not working anymore. And then you start looking around, and you think, I could go. You ever had that thought? I mean, it's a law, but it's kind of a recommendation. And have you ever had that moment where you thought, I think I should just go? And so then you just kind of touch the gas, and you start going slowly forward. Because if you go slow, it's not breaking the law. Because you're trying to trigger the light in your mind. And then you get about halfway out, and you think, oh, I'm already halfway. So I don't want to be a danger to others, so I just go all the way through. You ever done that? And then you're looking around to see if there's a cop there because they've been waiting for you the whole time. But you're not really worried about breaking the law, just getting caught. You ever been frustrated because there seems to be a law that doesn't really apply to the moment? The reason that law is there is because it applies to other moments. The reason that law is that you have to stop at the stop light, even when there's no cars coming, is that you need to have that practice so you'll stop when there are cars coming. You ever seen someone just careen through a red light in the middle of a busy intersection? You wonder, what is that person thinking? They're out of their mind. They just applied what you did by yourself when they were with other people. Let me tell you why there's laws. Because governments know they can't trust you with their freedom. You can't be trusted with your freedom, so you need some rules to stop you. So that when you're with other cars, when you're in the middle of traffic, you'll stop. Because what would you do if you were free? You ever been at one of those four-way stop signs? And 4 cars converge at the same moment? And you decide, I'm just going to roll and go. Because if I stop, it makes it too even and I have to wait. You've never done that, right? I mean, that happened to me tonight. But I was going home for a little while. I got near the neighborhood, and there was 2 cars to my left, and I stopped. I stopped legally and completely. And the 2 cars to my left, they stopped. But I wanted to be gracious, having thought about this all day. And so I let the first one go through. And as I looked at him going through, I took off my brake and started to go. Another guy tried to go through before I could get through. And I looked at him and I went, it's my turn. And then we were driving to eat lunch. And we're driving down the right lane down La Brea, and this car cuts us off. Just cuts us off. Don't you hate when that happens? And then Aaron beeps at them. I'm like, Aaron, I just talked about like being gracious. And he goes, that's Brooke. That's Brooke. So I have 2 pastors, one cutting the other pastor off, the other one beeping at them. That's why they're laws. Because the law knows what you would do if you were just completely free. There's this thing called the FDA. I guess they regulate what we eat and things like that. Isn't that absurd to think that we need a government organization to stop farmers and ranchers from making decisions that would help them make more money at the risk of our own health? Who would do that, right? Who would make decisions that would take shortcuts just to make a little bit more money and risk their children and their neighbors? But we have the FDA. You know why? Because they know what people will do in their freedom. We have an entire institution that works on banking regulations, as if bankers can't be trusted with our money. I mean, they monitor banks because they think that people are greedy and that they would misuse our money. They might embezzle it or misappropriate or misuse it. It's insane, right? Isn't it odd that every institution we have that creates regulations and policies and laws are actually trying to stop us from act in our freedom because of what we do when we're free? I don't think God understands that, because God gave up all of his leverage. He said, you've been called to be free. This is how it begins. The moment you enter into a relationship with Jesus Christ, you're free. See, it's this thing called grace. God will never withhold his love from you. He will never push you out. He doesn't understand that we need a little guilt and shame to keep us in line. We need a little fear of judgment and condemnation to keep us on the right path, right? But God says, no, I'm going to just give you everything your soul needs. And I'm going to let you live in that freedom. And so here's what Jesus does. God steps into human history, takes on flesh and blood, walks among us, lives a sinless and perfect life, offers himself as a sacrifice so that we might live, allows himself to be brutally beaten and crucified on the cross so that he might be buried and might rise on the third day. He does all that before we've done anything. And then he says, I want to receive you to myself, and if you will allow me, I will forgive you for everything you've ever done, everything you will ever do. And you'll have that grace without condition, and my love will belong to you, and you cannot lose it because I will never let you go. So where does God have an advantage to leverage our actions? Doesn't he know what we would do in our freedom? And yet he tells us this. You are called to be free, so do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. In other words, don't use your freedom to become a slave. Listen to what he says in verse 1 of Galatians 5. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Now, that sounds so profound, but what does that mean? Have you ever read something in the scripture and went, wow, I know that's awesome. It sounds so awesome, but I don't really know what that means. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Well, for what else would he set us free? Isn't the whole point of being set free freedom? You see, if you think that's absurd, think about your choices. What have you done with your freedom? See, he's trying to tell us, no, you don't understand why I've set you free. I didn't set you free so you could lose your freedom. I didn't set you free so you could make choices that would make you a slave again. I did not set you free so you could actually build a prison around your soul and hold yourself captive. I did not set you free to put chains around you to hold you to your past. It says, it is for freedom I have made you free. There's some of you, you are walking into this space and we could hear the chains as you were walking in. Because you're chained to the choices you made in the past. You're bringing all your bitterness in and all your pain in and all your fear in and all your doubt in and all your wounds in. And every bad relationship you've ever had is dragged right in here with you. And you act like you're free. You're less free now than you were before you were free. Because you made choices that robbed you of your freedom and your freedom. And Jesus wants you to know that's not why he set you free. He set you free to live in that freedom. So why do you keep giving it up? Don't give up your freedom. Don't give up your freedom. There's nothing in this world that's worth giving up your freedom for. There's nothing in this world that, even though it seems so tantalizing and so appetizing and it draws you in, I'm telling you, there's no wealth, no power, no fame, there's no pleasure on this planet that's worth giving up your freedom for. And some of you in that moment, it just looks so good. You thought, I'm free. I can do whatever I want to do. I know that God loves me without condition. I understand that Jesus died for me, so I'm free to do whatever I want. And you made a choice in your freedom that robbed you of your freedom. So he says in verse 1 of Galatians 5, stand firm then, and do not let yourselves, listen to the responsibility, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Jesus chose to make us free. We choose to become slaves again. And the beautiful thing about Jesus is that really he should have just done it once. But he is willing to set you free time and time and time again. And even when you don't know how to be free and just keep making the choices of a slave, he just keeps coming back and unlocking the prison door and breaking the chains and letting you walk free again. And while he will not free you of the consequences of your choice, he will free you to never be held captive by the worst moments of your life so that you can move forward to the best moments of your life. Isn't that good to know? So stand firm and do not let yourself be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. So how do I do that? How can I live in this freedom? How can I make sure that I don't lose the freedom I have? Here it is, back in verse 14. He says, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Don't use your freedom for yourself. Don't make foolish choices in your freedom. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Now, here's, I think, the paradox. When you're first free, all you want to do is just revel in that freedom. I'm free. But you don't even know what to do with that freedom. See, if all you ever been is a slave, all you know is the routine of a slave. All you know is the life of a slave. And you may have a perception of what freedom looks like, but it's actually just another prison. Because you may not realize if you were a slave and you thought your master was free, he wasn't free either. Because if he was free, you would not have been a slave. See, when we're slaves, we're forced to serve. We're obligated to serve. We're obligated to act in humility because we're slaves. So when we're free, we think now we're free of a life of humility. We think we're free of a life of service. We think we're actually free from the wrong things. And so what's strange sometimes is that when you've been under someone who's been violent, abusive, when you've been the slave of someone who manipulated you with guilt and shame, when you've been the slave to someone who used power for their own personal benefit and overpowered you, then you're free. For some reason, we end up becoming what we saw that person to be like. Because we think that's what free people get to do with their freedom. But you see, when you're free, when Jesus makes you free, you realize, oh, when I was a slave, I was obligated to serve, but now I'm free, and I'm empowered to serve. See, when you're free, you realize that freedom looks like service. There was no one who ever lived more free than Jesus. No one who ever knew freedom more powerfully than Jesus. And yet he allowed himself to be stripped of his dignity. He allowed himself to be beaten and mocked and spat upon. He allowed himself to be dragged to a cross and nailed to that tree. He allowed them to raise up that cross. And in their minds, he was no longer free. He was held captive by their power, by their violence, by their darkness. But I want you to know something. That moment where Jesus looked like a slave, he was most free. Because in that moment, Jesus chose to serve. In that moment, Jesus chose to sacrifice himself. See, when you are free, you understand that the act of freedom is to serve others in love. And so he says, stop using your freedom to indulge the flesh, rather serve one another humbly in love. See, when you're immature and you're free, you think freedom is all about you. When you're mature and you're free, you realize freedom is about others. See, when you're immature and you're free, you think now I'm free to take. But when you're mature and you're free, you know now you're free to give. See, when you're immature and you're free, you think now I can consume everything I want. But when you're mature and you're free, now you go, oh, now I can create whatever I want. See, when you're immature, you think freedom is all about you. It's all about you getting more, getting your own. But when you're mature and you're free, you realize it's all about others and bringing beauty and freedom and goodness to the world. When you're free, you serve others in love. And by the way, Jesus said this in John 8:36. He says, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So here's the beautiful thing. By the way, that's a Jesus drop the mic moment. He says, when the Son sets you free, not when someone else sets you free. Because, see, all the other things in life that say they're free, they're going to cost you something. He says, when the Son sets you free, it's a different kind of freedom. When the Son sets you free, you're free indeed. See, when the Son sets you free, you're free from all the things that hold you back and hold you down and hold you under where no one else can see. Because some of you, you have chains holding you down and anchors pulling you under, and you're drowning in an ocean of your own guilt and shame. You're drowning under the waters of your own bitterness and unforgiveness. You're drowning and you can't find your freedom. But Jesus, I want you to know, if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. You are no longer anyone's slave. No one is your master. Good God. Man, let me tell you, there's nothing more exciting than to be free. You don't have to worry about what other people think about you. You're free. The only person you need to worry about is what God thinks about you. So you're free from a life of obligation. You're free from worrying about whether you fail or succeed. You're free because you never have to worry about being loved or accepted. You're free from worrying about messing up or tripping up because God knows you. And He not only paid the price for every mistake you've ever made, He's paid the price for every mistake you will ever make. And He knows where you came from, but He also knows what you're called to. Now, I don't know what bondage you came from, but I know what freedom you're called to. And when the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. I love being free. I love waking up in the morning and living the life that I was created to live. See, I love being able to breathe deeply of the oxygen around me and know that I am free to dream. I am free to create. I am free to imagine a better world, a different world. I am free to believe I can be a better man, a different man. I am free to know that I can create with power and intention because I don't have to live a life of obligation anymore. I can live a life of intention because I am free from everything that will hold me back and hold me down. And I want that for you. I want that for you. I want you to dream. Dreams so big they paralyze you. And then they inspire you. And then they move you. I want you to see a future so overwhelming that everyone else thinks you're out of your mind to pursue it. But you're free to risk greatly. See, the life that God created you to live, no one else will be able to see it. No one else will be able to fully comprehend it. And in fact, even the people who love you may think you're out of your mind because I'm telling you, the life that God created you to live is bigger than you and bigger than them. And the only way you'll ever live it is if you step into that freedom and go, it's okay, because I'm allowed to fail. I'm allowed to not be talented enough. I'm allowed to not be gifted enough. I'm allowed to be too young. I'm allowed to not be smart enough. I'm allowed to be less than everyone thinks I am because I know that God has called me to be free. And if there's slavery there, that's not my future. Because everywhere I'm going, there's freedom there. Where are you going? What's your future look like? I hope you run free. By the way, that's what Jesus came. Jesus did not die on a cross so that you could look like everybody else, so that you could conform to everyone else's expectation. Jesus did not die on the cross so that you could conform and standardize yourself. Jesus died on the cross to set you free. And there's a unique, beautiful, powerful, unimaginable human being inside of you that is waiting to be set free. And Jesus will call that person out. And the same way with his power, he said, Lazarus, arise, and called him out of the dead. God will call out of you that greatness that is waiting in you, that waits to live in that freedom that only Jesus can bring. You ever wondered why Jesus is the answer to your life? If he is what your soul longs for. You ever wondered why God doesn't just impose himself on you? It's because even when you act like a slave and live like a slave, he still treats you as if you're free. He will not force himself on you. He invites you to freely choose him, to choose his love, to accept his forgiveness, to walk with him. And there's some of you that need to cross that line of faith and move from slavery into freedom. Because he who the Son sets free is free indeed. Because the one who could not be held by the grave, but conquered death and lives, he's the one who invites you to let him set you free. So I wonder if you're here and it's time. This is your emancipation. This is your moment. This is your freedom. If you're here and you're just done carrying the chains and you're ready for Jesus to set you free, I want you to pray a simple prayer with me right now. Would you just bow your heads with me just for a moment? Just close your eyes. If you're ready to cross that line of faith and step into the freedom that Jesus brings, I want you to pray this simple prayer. It's just one sentence. It's not everything that you and God will talk about. You guys are going to have a conversation forever. Because he's going to keep calling you into your freedom. But it begins here. This is the prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. That's it. So I want you right now, if you're ready to step into his freedom, I want you to pray that right now. Jesus, I give you my life. If you're ready to cross that line of faith and to move from bondage to freedom right now, just pray that. Jesus, I give you my life. Don't worry about what anyone else will think. Don't worry about what anyone else will say. You are free from that. Right now, just cry out to him, Jesus, I give you my life. Just whisper that prayer to him. Jesus, I give you my life. I'm telling you, if you will do that right now, as you give him your life, he will give you his life. And he'll take the chains that hold you down and he will break every one of them. And he will open the prison door that you created for yourself. And he will teach you how to walk in your freedom. Right now, just pray that. Jesus, I give you my life. If that's you in this moment, I want to pray for you. But I want you to step into your freedom. I want you to own your freedom. If you just prayed that prayer, Jesus, I give you my life, I want you with courage and with faith, with confidence and with strength. I want you right now, without hesitation or embarrassment, I want you to raise your hand and say, yes, I just made that decision. I just prayed that prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. If that's you, just hold your hand up now. I want to see you right now. Beautiful. Beautiful. Anyone else right now? This is your moment. Don't worry about anyone else. This is your moment. Right now, just hold your hand up high and say, yes, this is my prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. Beautiful. Anyone else right now? This is your moment. Jesus, I give you my life. Wonderful. Father, I pray for the women and men in this room and those listening around the world who in this moment crossed the line of faith and whispered this prayer, Jesus, I give you my life. God, I just pray that you would wrap them up in your love and let them know that you heard their prayer and that they belong to you, that they've been called into freedom, and it is for freedom that you've set them free. I pray that right now, God, they would just have an overwhelming sense of your presence, that they would know that you will never leave them or abandon them, that they belong to you. And God, I pray that today would be an emancipation day, that they would begin to walk in that freedom and live their life so powerfully and so uniquely. I pray, Father, that you would do this in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Can we thank God for all those who responded to him? So I have just a couple of practical applications for you. Go crazy this week serving others in love. You know how sometimes when there's two people getting in line and you use the shoulder to get ahead of them, and you act like they're not there? This week, when you do that, just turn around and say, hey, please, you first. Just serve them in love. When you go to the restaurant and you get that bad waiter or that bad waitress who hates their life, When you see that they're having a miserable day, horrible time, tip them up front. Say, hey, I just want you to know I want to tip you up front. And you can just give us whatever service you want, but we're going to tip you as if you gave us the best service in the world. And it'll shake them up. And if they give you terrible service, go to them afterwards and say, you must be really having a hard day, so I'm going to give you another tip. Because you need someone to let you know that you matter. See, this week, when someone cuts you off, I was trying to turn in here, and this white Bentley blocked me. I couldn't even get in. He just stood there. And I was getting a little heated, so I rolled down my window. He wouldn't look at me. I was just going to say, beautiful car. I want to confuse him. I want to flip the script. I want people to be shocked and surprised by how we treat them and what we do. See, your freedom, use it to serve others in love. So if you have someone that you work with that you just don't enjoy, find out what their favorite drink is, their favorite smoothie. Find out what their favorite lunch is and just bring it to them. And just shock them. Find someone that's driving you crazy and do something crazy to serve them in love. Because I've experienced this in my life. In fact, I was in a grocery store. You ever get in a grocery store and the person in front of you isn't ready to pay as if they didn't know what was going to happen? And this has happened to me. I had this person and their credit cards didn't work, and then they were looking at their cash and they didn't have enough cash, and so now they're trying to figure out what they have to take off to be able to pay for it with the cash they have. And I don't know what or why. Maybe it was just God just prompting me. I just said, hey, don't worry. I've got you. I'm going to pay for all your groceries. And the cashier said, what? I said, oh, I got it. Just put it all on my bill. And the person said, no, you don't have to do that. I said, no, I don't have to do it. I want to do it. Would you let me do it? And they go, sure. Well, can I get your address and pay you back? I said, no, just one day when you have more money and someone doesn't have any, you just do this for them. Like, okay. And it's the most wonderful feeling in the world. And I've seen crazy responses. We were in a store and we were on one counter, and there was this elderly couple and this other counter, and they were trying to buy a teapot. And he got there and said, we were trying to buy this teapot. Do you have any discounts? And the guy said, if you have our store's card, you can have a discount. She looks in her purse. She goes, no, I don't have your store's card, but do you have another discount? He goes, I'm sorry, lady, but if you have our store's card, you can have a discount. And she clearly didn't have enough money for the teapot. And then she starts telling him a story. Well, I ruined my daughter's teapot. I almost burned the house down, and I just have to replace the teapot. Do you have any other discounts? He goes, I told you, if you have our store's card, you can buy the teapot. And I looked at the cash register. It was right behind me, and I saw how much it was. It wasn't very much, so I tapped him. I said, do you have a 20? Because I had some cash and I needed a little bit more. And I just tapped the guy right there. He was literally right next to me. I tapped him and said, hey, I'm going to buy that for them. And he looked at me and said, you're not allowed to do that. I said, what? He goes, you're not allowed to just buy the other customer's item for them. I said, no, seriously. And I held up the money because I thought maybe it was a communication issue. And I said, no, I'm going to buy the teapot for them. And he looked past me to another employee, goes, hey, he's not allowed to do that, right? He can just buy the customer's item for them, because there are policies against kindness. There are laws against generosity, because you don't know what you'll do with your freedom. And so I thought maybe it's a logistical issue. I'm standing in the wrong line. So I went around the counter to his side. And this poor little elderly couple, they're so embarrassed. No, please don't. I said, would you just give me the honor of buying this for you? And I looked at the guy, and I held up the money, and I said, I said it the way Jesus would. I said, I'm going to buy the teapot. Well, actually, I said that, but I was communicating with my eyes. I'm about to grab your head and smash it against the counter. The way Jesus would act in the temple. So this is still like Jesus. It's just the other Jesus and moment. And he goes like this, like, I give up. Okay. See, what I want to challenge you this week, let's create a revolution of freedom, serving others with love. And if you're afraid to talk to people about God or tell them about Jesus, just do this. It's going to change your life. People are going to come to you and say, what's going on? Have you lost your mind? And eventually someone's going to come and say, what in God's name is going on with you? And you'll go, exactly. And then you can tell them, oh, I'm a part of a revolution that started 2,000 years ago, where we use our freedom to serve others in love. His name is Jesus. And our revolution in LA is called Mosaic. Do you want to come? Because in our revolution, we use our freedom to set people free, to serve, to love, because we understand what freedom looks like. And we will not give up our freedom any longer. So don't do it. Don't give up your freedom. Live in this freedom for the next 25 years. Let's set the city free to love.
Will you stand and sing this with us? Greater than I could ever dream. Greater than I could ever dream. Further than I could ever see. Who can compare to the greatest wonder? Higher than I could ever reach, stronger than I could ever be. Nothing compares to how you love me. Greater than I could ever dream, further than I could ever see. Who can compare to the greatest wonder? Higher than I could ever reach, stronger than I could ever be. Nothing compares to how you love me. Greater than I could ever dream, further than I could ever see. Who can compare to the greatest wonder? Higher than I could ever reach, stronger than I could ever be. Nothing compares to how you love me. Greater than I could ever dream, further than I could ever see. Who can compare to the greatest wonder? Higher than I could ever reach, you're stronger than I could ever be. Nothing compares to how you love. I will lift my eyes to things unseen, to the promised land, your victory, and I will build my life on the mystery where you call me, and I will go. I will build my life on the mystery where you call me, and I will go into the unknown.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. If you're like me, you're like crying, but also wanting to just go out there and change the world, you know? That is just the greatest gift tonight. Pastor Erwin McManus, thank you so much. Give a round of applause. Wow. I'm forever changed by that talk. I have to watch that again and again and again. Make sure you watch those podcasts because they're out there. Watch it again and get it inside yourself so that you know that you can live in that truth. And for you who's out there that raised your hands to accept Jesus in your life, what an incredible decision that you have made. We want to give you this gift of this Bible. And on the back it says you belong here. And we want you to know that you belong here. This is your home. And we want you to know this truth. And inside it has incredible stories of incredible people making mistakes and then making incredible, incredible lives and victories. So read it and be inspired. And then if you're new here and you just want to get it plugged in and served, then we have an after party at the back lobby patio. So come and meet people and introduce yourself. That's the first step of living free. And this week we're starting Cruise. So if you're living on the west side, come and be a part of it. Be on Cruise. There's so many great people that are leading it. And just let's do life together. I want to do life with you. Let's do life with everyone. Everyone's invited. Okay, well, we love you. We'll see you next Sunday. Have a great week.